is planning to end. In a CBS News exclusive, we've learned the Department of Homeland Security is planning to end temporary protected status for South Sudanese nationals. The move would end more than a decade of protection that allowed the organization could to more. Respondent Nicole Stana joining us now. So Nicole, first breakdown, how many people will be impacted by this? What could happen to them?
Yeah, Lindsay estimates that roughly 5.
I noticed it was kind of cut, like showing the background there a little bit, but was it glitchy on your end or anything?
Yes, I'll play it. Hello, everybody.
All right, cool. What's up, everyone? Just a little testing of my computer. Wanted to see if I can play a video.
Hi, Sean, Old Man Barker, Uncle Warren, Jacqueline.
Welcome back, everyone.
And
been so
everybody
long.
that's lurking in the background. Well, we had fun yesterday on Uncle Warren's show, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm having a good time with the streaming so far this year. Although the topics are not fun, this is another one of those things about, oh, here comes the impending doom, yet another country facing all kinds of disaster, and then, but let's not get demoralized. That's not what we're here for. So.
Well, before that, I want to play these two videos because it's like the perfect response to what's going on with the files, which Trump is saying he's totally vindicated. He's been vindicated. And I'm like, huh? What? I don't know if you've seen that. Let me see if I can turn up the volume. All right, here we go.
Again, I don't know how to cry on camera, so you just have to take my words. I was in tears this morning. Okay, I just woke up and saw two historical events unfolding within the same hour. Firstly, the former South Korean president was sentenced to life in prison for trying to suspend the constitution and deploy the troops illegally. This should have happened in the US after January 6th. I understand it was hard.
Oh, cutting out on my end.
You know, the evidence was not as clear-cut as the South Korean case.
Do you guys let us know in the chat if it's lagging for you guys?
Well, what's going on?
And the demented rapey guy was way more.
Well, let's try.
How
about you pause it and refresh
but still, the contrast between the two legal systems is striking. A life sentence.
They tell me to stop playing Facebook videos.
Well, yeah, I think I
but
agree with
the problem with that is, well, I'm an old lady and I don't really do Instagram or TikTok.
Well, no, I don't do those either.
So
we need some kind of videos from somewhere, but I just go YouTube for my videos. Maybe try going with like Rumble and some of the more like BitChute, you know, these kind of like Kick, all these other streaming platforms we're hearing about, but not really getting on. You can check those out for video content.
I've never even seen Kick before.
Yeah, neither have I. Never actually gone on there.
Tell it on myself.
We should. It's just the typical thing with older technology users. Get a little bit set in your ways. You don't really want to go doing too much work to learn how to do everything all the youngsters are doing.
That's the only reason I still have a shitty iPhone. Because I don't want to learn how to use an Android.
Yeah, I just got this thing, whatever, 6 months ago or something, and I just learned how to use it bare minimum, and I should probably get more into it, but especially with all this surveillance tech and stuff, we've got to have a little bit more. Like I can be a little reactionary when it comes to technology, so you need to have some. You need to build like a resistance kind of technology skill. Figure out how to turn off the extra things that you can, limit whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Peace, fam. You could do that in your apps, by the way.
Peace. Yeah, I did some of that, but I need a tech expert.
I'll start this over. Oh, Uncle Warren, you got to teach us how to make shorts. We forgot yesterday.
Oh yeah, all in good time. Apparently, if it's easy, we'll just have to talk about it next week, or whatever. If it comes on Tuesday.
All right, let me see if this works now.
Know how to cry on camera, so you just have to take my words. So I was in tears this morning. Okay, I just woke up and saw two historical events unfolding within the same hour. So firstly, the former South Korean president was sentenced to life in prison for trying to suspend the constitution and deploy the troops illegally. This should have happened in the US after January 6th. I understand it was hard. The evidence was not as clear-cut as the South Korean case. And the demented rapey guy was way more popular than his South Korean counterpart for some mysterious reasons. But still, the contrast between the two legal systems is striking. A life sentence versus no accountability at all, plus re-election, plus tripling his wealth. The second event was even more striking. The creepy noble guy, Prince Andrew, got his ass arrested. Don't tell me elites can't be held accountable. You can't get more elite than this fucker. We're talking about the most powerful monarchy in the world, which lasted 1,000 fucking years. Longer than
you can get more elite. You can get more elite than the prince. It's called the king. Right? Just a small little point of observation.
You know what he means. The rapey guy.
I think that Prince Andrew is being thrown to the wolves by his own royal family, and that seems like such a grand victory, but it's not necessarily without precedent. When you look at the history of monarchy, if they have to just like excommunicate a family member, they're okay with that.
So. CBC voters here. We met him or her yesterday.
Well, I've seen him around in some chats. Good to see you here. I guess I hadn't exactly let you know that we have a show. That might have been my bad. So thanks for hanging out.
Yep. Okay.
1,000 fucking years. Longer than any Chinese dynasty.
I gotta go back a little bit.
World, which lasted 1,000 fucking years. Longer than any Chinese dynasty, by the way. And we're talking about a guy who was allegedly the favorite child of the late queen. He was sucked up to by almost everyone he bumped into, except maybe his brothers. And guess what? He's becoming just another pedo in prison. So yes, you fucking can hold elites accountable. It's just a matter of how decent a nation wants to be and how many balls a country's voters have.
Well, baby, this isn't a decent nation, so you...
Well, I want to know what kind of jail conditions that Mr. Prince Andrew is going to be in when you talk about him going to jail versus the average lower class individual. I don't think that the gilded prison is not the same as the typical torture, horror,
That prison that Ghislaine Maxwell's in has cafes, and it's basically like a little town that you can't leave from, but there's like stores and shit. Like what?
It's a little hotel, permanent hotel.
Right. It's crazy. Now this one, he's not angry enough for me, but
he's probably kind of liberal. You seem to be all, this is what should be happening at January 6th.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but of course, it's like apples and oranges. You're comparing the South Korean Although I don't know enough about the South Korean system, it seems like they're pretty out of whack over there too. Crazy motherfuckers, those South Koreans. But
Well,
America is uncontested with its corruption of its judicial system. It's like you should not be expecting that to be happening. You don't understand how bad America is, maybe.
Yes, but I prefer Timu Rathbone's level of intensity.
Oh, is this him now?
Uh-huh. So, there you go.
What do you mean the King of England's prosecuting his own brother for being in the redacted files?
His
Our own
birthday,
government
by the
said
way.
we can't do that because the whole thing will collapse. The King of England is prosecuting his own brother. They said they put his own brother in handcuffs. And you telling me we can't put the CEO of Limited 2 in handcuffs? Huh? What? You telling me Bill Gates out here going like a G6 in the sky? And they got Andy from Norfolk. That's what they called him. Prince Andrew was at one point second in line. He was number 2 in line for the crown. He was about to get the best government housing in the history of the world. And now they're calling him Andy from Norfolk. And we can't even talk about David Copperfield. We're out here, Attorney General of the United States being like, the whole thing will collapse if we turn the files into trials. Meanwhile, they're over there in Britain. They never even seen a son. And they're prosecuting royals for the first time since 1647. What was the point of 1776, bitch? What was the point of the Declaration of Independence? If they get more justice for their royals than we can get for our rich people. You got a cabal of redacted elites. They got capes and shit. They got crowns. And they got cuffs for those motherfuckers. What do we have over here? Ambassadorships. We got awards. We got Wall Street bells. Ring the fucking trial bell, motherfucker. What do you mean the King of England's prosecuting his own?
Oh, that's the level of angry.
No, I know, but it's
turn those files into trials.
Apparently, he's not an anti-monarchy enough, right? Because, like, just think about the very opening sentence, or whatever, about the king. Apparently, the King of England's prosecuting his own brother. So, what does that mean? That the monarchy itself is considered legitimate enough to be running the trial, right? And that's that monarchy that you guys did your revolution against because it was not considered fair. It was not giving fair judgments at trial and whatnot, so you couldn't trust it. So it had to be overthrown.
Well, he said
it's still in existence today.
He say, what was the point of 1776?
Right.
Like, wasn't that the whole damn point?
What's the point of this Prince Andrew trial, or whatever, from King Charles's perspective, is to protect his own ass. The crown itself is at stake. Okay, the British people should rise up and depose the monarchy forever. Okay, abolish it. That is what should be happening. But instead, they are somehow off in some fucking la land as to think that it's okay in 2026 to be living in what some kind of fantasy world of what you call a constitutional, parliamentary, whatever monarchy, whatever the word is, the constitutional monarchy. There's no such thing. Okay. If you have your constitution and your people's parliament, you don't need a fucking king. They're there for apparently no reason at all, except for when it needs to assert its authority, meaning your constitution means nothing because your country still needs to be cucked under the absolute divine authority of a king. Make up your mind, right?
So this dude, like the dude, what's his name? Timu Rathbone. I think he was one of the influencers that was at the White House. So I take him with a grain of salt. Because why were you at the White House? At the Trump White House.
What, Timu Rathbone was at the Trump White House?
Yeah, Timu Rathbone.
Oh, yeah? No.
I don't know his name.
Probably because what Cobra's saying here, where he might not realize it, or he might be in on it. He might be more sinister.
Okay, Rondo's confirming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's either, and he doesn't seem so stupid, so he probably understands the quid pro quo there, right? This is the thing I don't like about people who don't recognize the threat of a monarchy, right? They're so, like, they will preserve the monarchy because they're anti-communist, right? And they'll treat communists like they're dictators when what is a monarchy if not a dictator? You know?
But I wanted to show you this too before we start, because this is just, I couldn't believe it. They were interviewing Trump on the, I don't know why this is happening. Let me try to open it like this. Does that work? Okay, perfect. So they were interviewing Trump on Air Force One, and this is what he had to say about the prince.
What's up, Indy?
Here we go. Oh, wait. You can't see it. You can't see it. Okay, my bad. XD's is here.
How's it going? Good
All
to
right,
see
here we
you.
go.
I saw the little salute. That's right. What's up?
Who else is here?
No, that's
Oh,
everybody.
Indy. Hi,
Oh, man,
Indy.
yeah. We say hi to OMB.
Yes.
That's everybody.
Okay, so this is his this is his response to the prince getting arrested.
Former Prince Andrew arrested by the police there, related to something with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think people in this country at some point, associates of Jeffrey Epstein, will wind up in handcuffs too?
Well, you know, I'm the expert in a way because I've been totally exonerated. That's very nice. I can actually speak about it very nicely. I think it's a shame. I think it's very sad. I think it's so bad for the royal family. It's a very, very sad. To me, it's a very sad thing. When I see that, it's a very sad thing. To see it and to see what's going on with his brother, who's obviously coming to our country very soon, and he's a fantastic man, king. So I think it's a very sad thing. It's really interesting because nobody used to speak about Epstein when he was alive, but now they speak. But I'm the one that can talk about it because I've been totally exonerated. I did nothing. In fact, the opposite. He was against me. He was fighting me in the election, which I just found out from the last 3 million pages of documents.
Former Prince Andrew.
He's been totally exonerated. He's an expert on the subject because he's been totally exonerated.
Well, we'll see how that statement ages. You know, I'm not necessarily thinking that he's gonna get away with it cleanly, but I'm not able to predict the future of. I'm not confident to say that his time is coming soon, right? Like, you're next, buddy. I'm not seeing that in the next few weeks, at least, right? Should have already happened. That's what everyone's kind of saying, if not thinking, is like, why has Trump not been arrested? You know, his administration releasing the files and everything. So we should all be kind of observing it from, like, how effective is power at maintaining itself in this kind of, like, whatever. The compromise used to bring down governments, but when a fascist dictatorship is out in display, your scandal's not exactly going to break their hold on power. So,
By the way, I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but someone found Jeffrey Epstein's login and password to his FedEx account because they didn't redact it in the files. So they went in and looked at his history, and there were some things being mailed after his death. Now, FedEx went and deleted it, but they already had pulled it down. So one went to West Palm Beach, and one went to, I forgot. It was like 2 packages that were delivered after his death.
well, I wouldn't
It's
want
like,
to.
how are you in that account?
Well, I'm not sure. Like, we could be saying like FedEx would know. You're saying like Jeffrey Epstein sending packages, and FedEx is letting it knowingly letting it happen. A lot of times they're not really.
I wasn't really talking about FedEx. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
The point is that
There's
was
evidence that he's alive. Yeah, he's probably alive in Israel and stuff. And so how are we supposed to know? I think
Right.
we
And
it's
and,
like
and
Schrodinger's fucking Epstein now, right?
but
He's alive
but
or dead.
FedEx did delete the invoices, so they do have some culpability. I said that word right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna kind of brace myself for this 3 million files, and then this entire year is gonna be revelations of Epstein, and there's gonna be other news, like the topic of the day, South Sudan descending back into civil war. That's more the sort of stuff I focus on, and the Epstein stuff is important, but how much is the, even though this is a big threat to the administration, how much is it being used as a distraction for what they're still up to, you know?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that was the whole point of dumping 3 million pages all at once. So, people are busy trying to sift through the information. And meanwhile, they're, doing all kind of nefarious shit.
Yeah. Now,
They're trying to pass that SAVE Act. We should look at the Project 2025 tracker again and see how far they've gotten with it. That would be good to do.
Yeah. So, but with South Sudan, I'm not sure as far as to who to point the finger so quickly at the U.S. I have to do more research. We kind of pulled this stream together a little bit last minute. Not having time to do research today, I had to go get some new saddlebags for my bike because they all broke down on me, and so I was a little preoccupied today. But from what I can tell, the leader in South Sudan, like this.
Oh wait, before we start with South Sudan, one second. Right. I just want to make sure we close that off. So Indy says there was also the Rocket League account still active and the other gaming account everyone caught. Oh yeah. We talked about that. The gaming account. I don't really know what Rocket League is.
So there is some interesting stuff there about they kind of need to verify his identity for him to have access to an account there. But people can, is it even like if fake identities for a spy is not so hard to do.
Well, they're saying that
it's in his own account, right?
Like they're showing the picture of him on the gurney and all that stuff. And the nose is shaped differently. The ears were shaped differently. Dude was sweating, and we were like, "Wait, do dead people sweat? Like what?"
I haven't been looking into none of this stuff. Yeah, so we'll have to talk about this more on Tuesday because I'm looking forward to hearing about it all. But
that was it. And also, Ghislaine Maxwell, when she was pleading the fifth, she doesn't look like the same person either. So that's it. I'm done.
No, my bad. I'm just saying there's all these different researchers that are uncovering Epstein stuff as we speak, and I'm gonna need to take breaks from it because it's like everything's depressing enough as it is. That's like the nadir. It's the scraping the bottom of the barrel as far as the depressing shit, or like the horrific shit to be understanding what the ruling class is. He is like the personification of capitalism. I saw someone make a video titled that, and I'm like, yep, that's Epstein for you.
Yeah, I like that word, nadir. I haven't used that in a while.
It's a fun word. I like it.
Yeah. Okay. So we're putting a cap on that. Off to Southern Sudan we go. All right?
Yeah.
All right.
In a CBS News exclusive, we've learned the Department of Homeland Security is planning to end temporary protected status for South Sudanese nationals. The move would end more than a decade of protection that allowed thousands of displaced South Sudanese nationals to live and work in the U.S. The announcement comes as the UN and other organizations warn that South Sudan could be slipping back into a state of open war. CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanga joins us now. So Nicole, first break down how many people will be impacted by this? What could happen to them?
Yeah, Lindsay, DHS estimates that roughly 5,000 South Sudanese nationals are currently living in the U.S. Some of them have lived and worked for over a dozen years here. And the designation dates back to a period of real instability that began when South Sudan first gained its independence back in 2011. Multiple presidential administrations since then have extended the TPS program. Under that program, South Sudanese nationals who couldn't safely return to their home country because of the ongoing armed conflict and environmental disasters were shielded from deportation. That's no longer the case. In fact, a DHS official tells CBS News a formal notice of termination is going to be published in the Federal Register this week. That triggers a 60-day grace period for South Sudanese nationals to depart the U.S. or face deportation once their status officially expires in the beginning of January.
And how is the administration defending this? What criticisms is the White House facing in response?
Yeah, well, the decision by the DHS Secretary Kristi Noem came after consulting the State Department and other federal agencies. That's what DHS officials tell us. Those sources also pointed to what they say is the end of an armed conflict, improved diplomatic relations, and South Sudan's expressed commitment to reintegrating any returning nationals. They also added that TPS designation for South Sudan would be contrary to U.S. interests, but the State Department maintains a level 4 do not travel advisory for the country, citing persistent armed conflict, crime, kidnapping, and according to the Council on Foreign Relations, armed clashes among government troops, opposition forces, and ethnic militias continue to claim lives over there and displace civilians. The UN's human rights chief warned as recently as September that the fragile truce in place could crumble. This also isn't the first controversial end of temporary protective status made by this administration. DHS officials have also ended TPS for Venezuelans and Haitians, plus nationals from Nepal, Nicaragua, and Honduras. Lindsay.
Nicole Skanga, thank you.
So he also lifted temporary protection status for Haitians too.
Yep. That's just a little bit of like a introduction to the topic. That video was from let me see, 2025, sometime, like, was it November 5th, 2025. So things have deteriorated further since then. So let me kind of get into the...
Oh, that's an interesting point from Indy. Wait, hold on. I gotta do it from here. Keep in mind, this is CBS News, yes, so we already know this is a Zionist operation. Reporting on State Department's assessments. That means the CIA talking points, yes. She literally just mentioned the fucking Council on Foreign Relations.
Yep, and this here is from the United Nations, which we've frequently had plenty of pretty... a lot of castigating remarks for them, right? But I just go to this for some basic information, which of course is open to some propaganda through interpretation of evidence. But there's some basic things like the amount of estimations of people being displaced. That's like I think it's we can't necessarily just assume that everything that they're saying is lying or whatever. We have to sort of look for, like, I don't know, we have to, this is what I have to work with when you look it up, right? Like, I have other sources to go to. I have to try and kind of build my case with. We have to use the mainstream media. We just have to be critical of the information we're reading, obviously, right? So So let me just
Violence
get into
surges in
this.
South Sudan, leaving civilians at risk and peacekeepers stretched thin.
Yeah. Do you want to read this?
No, it's okay.
All right.
It's too
You want me to
small
make it a
for
little
me.
bit bigger? All right.
Yeah.
Is that big enough? A little bit
Yeah.
bigger? Okay.
There we go.
So this is from the 10th of February. It's 19th, so it's like a week old. But I hadn't seen any. Maybe I should have typed in specifically the date today, but I haven't seen any newer information this week. This is something that, because we were trying to find what do we talk about, I wanted to talk about this tonight because it doesn't seem to be something that people have reported on. So this is the kind of stuff that the people in the government, the administration knows that they're not like putting out into the press. I mean, it's in the press here, you can see, but it's not like making headline news because everyone's talking about something else, right? So, but it's right next door to Sudan, so it's completely topical, relevant, something to be important information people should be aware of, whether they're a little bit overwhelmed right now or not. So hopefully we'll just put it out there, and when people have time, they'll be able to check it out. So escalating violence, political stalemate, and humanitarian constraints are pushing South Sudan civilians to the brink once again, while funding cuts weaken the UN mission tasked with protecting them. Briefing ambassadors in the Security Council on Tuesday, UN peacekeeping chief Jean-Pierre Lacroix said instability had risen sharply in recent weeks, driven by political deadlock among signatories to the 2018 revitalized peace agreement and a dangerous escalation in armed confrontations. Fighting has intensified most dramatically in Jonglei state, where clashes between government forces and opposition elements displaced more than 280,000 people, according to government sources. Reports of aerial bombardments, inflammatory rhetoric, and severe restrictions on humanitarian access have raised fears of a return to the widespread violence seen in 2013 and 2016. Communities, Mr. Lacroix said, are once again on the move, fleeing areas where fighting has erupted and basic services have collapsed. Crisis unraveling. In late January, government forces instructed civilians, UN personnel, and humanitarian workers to temporarily relocate from several counties in Jonglei, including from the UN mission in South Sudan, base in Akobo, citing an anticipated military operation. Although the government later denied issuing such a directive and reiterated its cooperation with humanitarian partners, the episode underscored the volatility of the situation. Regional bodies, including the African Union and the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, have voiced alarm at the escalation, stressing that there is no military solution and that the peace agreement remains the only viable framework for stability. Except that once we get into sort of what's going on a little bit, trying to touch into the surface, because we have yet to really be able to do a deep dive on it. There is no real. The peace agreement is not a viable framework for stability. And so for them to stress that there is no military solution, well, there is the broken, like the these peace agreements that they're making are designed to be unworkable in the first place. And then they insist that people have to hold to a unworkable diplomatic process. This is repeated all over the world. You see with Russia, Ukraine, Gaza, and Israel, right? You have to respect that the peace agreement is not the only viable framework if it's not even a viable peace agreement. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
and we have to remember the UAE doesn't want stability in Southern Sudan. So, by design, they don't want to make a workable solution.
well, there's also the local people in power. There's this seems to me like a corrupt president that's been in power for 30 years or been involved in the civil war and has a iron grip on power, but he's increasingly the country's recognizing that he is one of the things that needs to go for any progress to happen. But he is like recognizing that himself, and like any dictator, old man refuses, or he's got probably delusions of grandeur and narcissism. He refuses to allow anything progressive to happen because he must be the one to maintain control until he dies. This is like another recurring theme. So, a lot of African dictators, unfortunately, that have been like this.
Yeah, I have an article about that. So
Okay.
we'll get to that.
Sure. Let's get down to more of this article then, so we can move on. This is just about the basics, getting the narrative that comes out of the UN, for whatever that's worth. So, Mr. Lacroix warned that unilateral initiatives
Whatever
to
that's
amend.
worth.
Well, because it's worth something, but what is it? Mr. Lacroix warned that unilateral initiatives to amend the peace agreement risk undermining its primacy, particularly proposals to defer key transitional tasks such as constitution making until after elections scheduled for December 2026. The Sudan People's Liberation Movement Army in Opposition, SPLM-IO, SPLMIO, has said it cannot engage in political dialogue while its leader, First Vice President Riek Machar, remains subject to ongoing legal proceedings, further complicating efforts to break the stalemate. Mr. Machar, once an ally of President Salva Kiir, has been under house arrest since March 2025 and reportedly faces charge of murder and treason, which he denies. So the whole peace agreement of 2018 rests on this Riek Machar and Salva Kiir sharing power. Okay, this guy gets to be the president, this guy has to be the vice president, whatever. But then this guy's like, no, that's not going to work for me because of something that happened that we'll get to. It's a little bit murky. If you're just going to believe what you read on the internet, you're not really going to understand, right, the full story. But we have to try and speculate a little bit as to what's really happening, because it seems to me like the president went and did a crackdown on some local like militias that are not really under this guy's control, and then he used it as like there was like a bit of a, I guess, a massacre kind of thing, like a UN helicopter was involved. There's a whole, I have to get to the story. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of my buried in the lead, something like that. But essentially, this guy is blaming this guy for stuff that's possibly not really true, and it's like by him accusing him like that and locking him up is destabilizing the whole country. So it's kind of a hard situation to wrap your head around from the outside looking in, but and trying to figure out how's the U.S. involved and whatnot. But I think it's more like the UAE instead of the U.S. Or the U.S. wants him out of power, and so then they're kind of distancing themselves from him and waiting for him to get whacked, and he can. This guy is seeing the blood in the water, right, and panicking.
And also, like the UAE are really in the United States have good relations with each other. So even if it's not like us directly, it's like, okay, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, type of thing.
Once one of their dictators,
what I'm saying.
Yeah, and once one of their dictators starts to become unreliable or uncooperative, then they start to look for a replacement. And so this guy probably recognizes he's about to be replaced, and so he's going to bring the whole country down with him. So we'll see what happens. So the deteriorating security situation is compounding what Mr. Lacroix described as one of the world's most dangerous environments for aid workers. In 2025 alone, 350 attacks on humanitarian personnel and facilities were recorded, a sharp increase from the previous year as the country grapples with its worst cholera outbreak on record. Since September 2024, more than 98,000 cholera cases have been reported nationwide, with a resurgence now underway in Jonglei. Flight restrictions and blocked movements are delaying medical evacuations and the delivery of life-saving supplies. Recent incidents include an airstrike on a hospital in Lankian on 3rd of February, which destroyed critical medical stocks and injured staff, and the looting of a health facility in Piri the same day. Violence has also forced the closure of 24 nutrition sites in Jonglai, cutting off care for nearly 8,000 children, including more than 2,600 suffering from severe acute malnutrition. So that's the government kind of bombing its own hospitals and its own people because they think that they're supporting the rebels, right? When it's sometimes the rebels, the resistance is the, fighting a corrupt power, and they shouldn't be treated like scum, Against this backdrop, UNMISS is grappling with significant funding-driven capacity reductions. Mr. Rodilquois said cost-cutting measures have already reduced protection patrols by up to 40% in some areas and by as much as 70% where bases have closed. Well, that's probably not the worst thing in the world. That's just we maybe don't need to be getting too much into the woes of the UN about how we can't protect these people that we're trying to exploit, so we can move on from there.
I'm trying to see where I want to go with it. I do have this article from the Human Rights Watch, and it's marked February 19th, and they're talking about UN investigations. I don't think it's probably that different from what you gathered from yours.
Right.
South Sudan extend UN investigations, staying ready to respond to any further deterioration of the human rights situation. This is from February 19th, 2026. Let me make it bigger. No, I don't want to do all that. Okay, ahead of the UN Human Rights Council, HRC, the undersigned non-governmental organizations right to urge your delegation to support the development and adoption of a strong resolution on the human rights situation in South Sudan. So this is just like a letter. See, to your excellencies. Okay, so it's just a strongly worded letter.
Right.
And we know what the result of those. So I don't even need to read this strongly worded letter.
Yeah. Well, I have another link to share here because we've got to kind of try and explain the sort of what led to the spiral. You got to try and get to the root of the conflict. Of course, we don't have time to get into the whole history. I was reading something interesting while I was to kill the time before we went live that maybe we can get into if we have time about like the history of the Communist Party in Sudan and stuff. But I think today I just kind of want to talk about like the recent developments as far as just to have people understand, like have the news report of today as opposed to the history lesson, So this is South Sudan army attacks displaced thousands in Nasir, communities at risk as crisis deepens. So this was from February 27th, 2025, so almost a year ago now. An alarming surge of violence in South Sudan's Nasir County, Upper Nile state, is putting communities at risk and threatening to plunge the region into deeper crisis. Political violence between South Sudan's People's Defense Forces and armed youth in Nasir has been ongoing since early 2024. Fighting began anew on February 14, 2025, when the SSPDF attacked civilians in a marketplace, leading to a series of armed confrontations with local youth that left thousands displaced and scores injured, including a peacekeeper. The army is engaged in an ongoing conflict with the armed group, the Sudan People's Liberation Movement, in opposition. The violence underscores the dangers of not addressing past abuses and the ongoing failure to implement key security arrangements outlined under South Sudan's 2018 revitalized peace agreement. There are echoes when I read this with the situation in the conflict, because there was a peace process that could have allowed the situation to improve, but there was an intentional failure to implement the key security arrangements outlined, and so the peace agreement was apparently a sham to begin with, if key parties involved were never intended to honor their part of the bargains. So these include security sector reform, disarmament, and unification of forces from various armed groups. But political disagreements and non-implementation of the peace deal have left the country vulnerable, and the lack of unified military forces has fueled clashes between government troops and local armed groups across the country. Since last year, communities in Nasir have been calling for the deployment of a unified force rather than the existing national defense troops who have been implicated in abuses against civilians. Since February 22nd, however, the authorities have deployed troops, including allied ethnic militias, that have not been part of the formal unification process. Local youth who feared forced disarmament and possible attacks reacted by mobilizing. The army has denied reports that it planned to disarm the youth and accused the SPLAIO of inciting young people to violence and fueling propaganda. Local leaders have called for dialogue and a suspension of deployments. On February 25th, SSPDF, while urging youth to disperse, launched airstrikes on SPLAIO positions. The strikes also hit civilian areas, setting the stage for a dangerous escalation in the conflict. International humanitarian law prohibits indiscriminate or disproportionate attacks that fail to distinguish between military and civilian targets, violations potentially constituting war crimes. The authorities should work to improve protection of civilians and rebuild trust between communities and SSPDF, which needs to include incorporating community perspectives in security plans and ending impunity for abuses. You got to respect the grassroots, the people that you intend to, if you're going to call yourself like a, whatever, democracy kind of thing, you got to incorporate the people's concerns in your governance, or else they're going to rebel against you. It's not hard to understand. So the international community should support all.
If they have the capability.
Sorry, what's that?
Oh, I said if they have the capability.
Yeah, but they're.
I mean,
as far as their capability,
we're not rebelling.
Yeah, I hadn't looked in specifically to the corruption of these kinds of this leader specifically. Maybe I could do some research on the fly or whatever. But so there was a story about a UN helicopter that got one of the South Sudan Army's generals was killed because the UN was trying to evacuate him in a helicopter. And the UN helicopter and the general inside got taken down by these rebels or whatever. So I kind of want to share that story.
Well,
I have all my tabs.
While you're finding it, I can share about the about the president in the election debacle. Let's see. Let me do that. Why are you looking for yours? So it says, add to stage. South Sudan appoints dead man to election panel in sign of political crisis. This is New York Times, by the way, and I think it's just a day old, a day or two.
Yeah, I had that article too. Yeah, I'd share that one with you, right? Yeah. That's a good one too. Even though it's the New York Times, I felt it was interesting to hear this. This little story, sorry.
No problem. The government of President Salva Kiir has been accused of gross incompetence as fighting between rebels and security forces pushes towards the capital. When President Salva Kiir, this is the 18th, so yesterday. What's today?
19th, yeah.
Okay. All right, and this is reporting from Nairobi, Kenya, apparently. When President Salva Kiir of South Sudan announced a panel to prepare for long-delayed elections, because their elections were suspended, and they got extended to 2026. So they should have had elections I think a year or two ago.
But they can't because he's
by the way.
jailed the opposition. The opposition refuses to participate because they jailed their leader or whatever.
I can't remember the details of why I can't remember the details. So anyway, If you know the details, please mention it. I just can't remember.
So I was just trying to look at the comments. So I was trying to respond to what you were saying, only half listening. So just go ahead and carry on or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
When President Salva Kiir of South Sudan announced a panel to prepare for long-delayed elections in his country, one name stood out. Stuart Saroba Budia, an opposition politician, was one of about 70 people appointed to the panel last month. But Mr. Budia couldn't serve on it because he had died 5 years earlier. The striking mistake, later corrected by embarrassed government officials, was another sign of the chaos that has enveloped South Sudan in recent months, as Mr. Kiir tries to bolster his beleaguered government while the country sides towards a new civil war. Mr. Kiir has fired or rotated numerous senior government officials over the past 18 months. It sounds like Trump in his first term. Some within days of their appointment. Sounds just like Trump. He has arrested and put on trial the country's vice president, Riek Machar, endangering a 2018 peace deal between the two men that underpins South Sudan's political stability. Mr. Kiir has also openly clashed with the United States, which accuses his government of undermining peace efforts and sabotaging humanitarian aid. Interesting. Okay. Because South Sudan initially tried to placate President Trump. This is what I remember. Okay, becoming the first country in Mr. Trump's second term to accept third country deportees from the United States last summer. Despite that, relations with Washington have deteriorated. So I mean, like, dude, you got to know
the U.S. is going to
Trump will turn on you.
Right.
Got to know the United States will turn on you.
Yeah, they use this situation as one of the rare opportunities for them to look like the American democracy or whatever. This man is starting to hijack the peace process. We like peace or whatever. So we're going to point the finger at him because he's acting like such an idiot that he's going to let us do that. And then they're going to wait for someone else to be in power and then work with him, engineer his destruction while acting like they're just whatever, not my problem.
They have no hand in it. Yeah. Same playbook. It's like, how do you guys not know the playbook by now? Come on, it's the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The political crisis in the capital, Juba, has stoked fighting between government forces and Mr. Machar's supporters in the northeast of the country, particularly in the states of Jonglei and Upper Nile. I hope I've said that right. As fighting pushed towards Juba in recent months, the military responded with brutal tactics, including an airstrike on a hospital run by Doctors Without Borders on February 3rd, the aid group said in a statement. More recently, the government has appeared to push the rebels back with claims it had recaptured key towns in the northeast. Well, so the northeast of Sudan or the northeast of southern Sudan?
Yeah. Northeast of South Sudan, which is
which is like central.
Which is still
Central
the southeast
Sudan.
of Sudan. The important thing that we'll get to maybe, but if not, we'll have to just mention it, is 90% of South Sudan's revenue comes from oil pipelines specifically that run through Sudan to get to the coast because they are landlocked. So the situation in Sudan is a direct threat to the lion's share of South Sudan's economic revenue. And so they've been if you want to be sympathetic or whatever, you can say they've been forced into an arrangement with the UAE and the RSF to protect those pipelines. But if you want to be a little bit more critical, you can recognize that South Sudan, the leader of South Sudan, has sided with the UAE and the RSF in the civil war against Sudan for whatever benefits that they feel that they can reap. And they're also going to sow the consequences of that alliance, right?
Yeah, the reason I wanted to make that clear, that it's the northeast of southern Sudan, is because Northern Sudan is Arab and Muslims, and South Sudan are Christians. So there's a big distinction between Northern Sudan and Southern Sudan.
Well, that's
So
yeah.
go ahead.
But
go
that's
ahead.
where now we have to, because there's a split. It's kind of, you need a double distinction there, where you need the south of Sudan and South Sudan is two different. Like there's in the north of
Right,
Sudan,
right. Northeast of
politics
South Sudan.
of Sudan is the north has always dominated the south, right?
Yes.
And so but now
Good.
South Sudan split away partly because of that, but there's still a south of Sudan that's
Because
that's
even
above.
though they're
Yeah, it gets
African,
confusing.
they think they're Arab African. So there's like this pretentious air that they're kind of like better than Southern Sudan because they're they're just African. You know what I mean? So
And
yeah,
that's actually, as far as the
Yes,
history of
eggs.
communism that I was looking into, part of the
Yes.
unique history of the Sudanese Communist Party is there was like the Nasserite, like pan-Arab nationalist, like socialist revolutionary movement across the Arab world. And so Sudan had a coup where they had a socialist revolutionary leader come into power that was part of that Arab nationalist sentiment. And one of the things that made Sudan unique is that they had the Sudanese Communist Party didn't really appreciate this Arab nationalist interpretation of socialism, probably specifically because of this north-south divide. And the interpretation of Marxist theory is the power to the people, and that would be like not necessarily historically the Arabs being the upper class in Sudan would be the ones that shouldn't be so-called leaders of the socialist revolution or whatever. There should be the oppressed people in the South should be, their concerns need to be like, they need self-determination, needs to be a part of the process. And that was obviously a mistake of, like, I think this has to do with the Soviet Union or whatever, trying to like do their real politics stuff and not really actually caring enough about the concerns of the indigenous locals or whatever, being dispossessed and whatnot. So they kind of, I'm kind of, again, it's better for me to read that article, but we're on a different one. So I don't know why I do that.
Okay, I'm gonna go back up.
Yeah.
Side note: these two in the front, very handsome.
Something about a man in a uniform.
All right, here we go. So I was talking about, okay. So more recently, the government has appeared to push the rebels back with claims it had recaptured key towns in the northeast of southern Sudan. Gotta make that distinction. Critics accuse Mr. Kiir's government of gross incompetence and say that his authority has become dangerously weak. The episode involving the deceased election official suggested he was out of touch, relying on outdated information and a shrinking pool of trusted allies. Senior analysts at International Crisis Group said that. Okay, Mr. Kiir's. Oh yeah, so that group is a
I wonder what
conflict
that
resolution research organization. Yeah,
I wonder who they are. But anyway.
So if they're a conflict resolution research organization, the chances are there's a likelihood. Yeah. Right. I mean, I don't want to say that about them because I didn't do the research on them, but when we read articles like this, we have to go down the rabbit hole and look at everything with a grain of salt. So I'm glad you kind of mentioned that and captured that because
if we don't have time to get into who all that is, we can just try and like put a little flag on it, be like, that looks a little suspicious. If anyone in the audience wants to do the research.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so tired. Mr. Kerr's frequent purges of senior aides have weakened the country's security apparatus and left him increasingly isolated, and have even led to gunfire on the streets of Juba. The firing of Mr. Kerr's powerful spy chief, Akol Kor-Kuk, that's a name, in 2024 was an early sign of the turmoil. In November, Mr. Kerr also fired another vice president, and his presumed successor, Benjamin Bol-mel, who is under U.S. sanctions. And that's pretty crazy. So this is so Vice President of South Sudan in the blue suit. Yeah. And
Yep.
oh, that's during his trial in September. Okay.
So I'll get into a little bit after this as to what that trial is and what's going on there.
Okay. At the African Union's annual summit last weekend, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa called on Mr. Kerr to release Mr. Machar, who has been under house arrest for almost a year. Wait, hold on. Oh, okay. It didn't click in my head because I was like, wait a minute, how is he the president of South Africa? Okay. Since September, Mr. Machar has been on trial on treason charges, which his spokesman has called a political witch hunt. Mr. Kerr has also fired from his cabinet Mr. Machar's wife, Angelina Tinney, the interior minister, and a powerful figure in her own right. This month, President William Ruto of Kenya tried to revive a moribund peace effort for South Sudan that was based in Nairobi. So far, those efforts have been fruitless. And just keep in mind that the writers of this article are also based in Nairobi. Okay, until last year, South Sudan.
Ruto of Kenya is one of the West's, I think, reliable lapdogs still in Africa. So they want him to be the one who does the process. Yeah. A peace process done by them successfully is sort of a signal that the U.S. interests are protected in South Sudan.
Okay. Sorry about that. That was my mother. Me,
No
Madre.
worries. I was just saying, if they had successfully completed the peace deal process in Kenya, to me that acts like a signal that American interests are alive and well protected in South Sudan. Right?
Yeah, Rondo makes a good point that Kenya is like a British outpost.
Right, that too. Yeah.
And there are a lot of Indians that live in Kenya. A lot.
Although now that's a good angle to be looking at as far as the authenticity of the growing rift between Europe and the UK and Canada and the US, as far as they'll fight over their interests in these countries in Africa and whatnot, and if they're actually fighting, but are they still working? Are they pretending to fight to reassert neo-colonial control over the people, the locals? You know.
Okay, so until last year, South Sudan's fragile peace agreement was underwritten by the 2018 deal, and you're going to talk about that a little later, right? I think you said you were going to talk about that deal. Okay.
Yeah, I have an article. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
And the arrest, the trial. I think you said you were going to talk about that too.
Well, I'm going to try and there's a helicopter attack. That's the reason why he arrested him. I'm going to read an article about that, and then an article about why they're blaming this guy for the ghost army or whatever.
Cool. Okay. I should probably put up the like, share, subscribe, because we forget to do that. All right. Until last year, South Sudan's fragile peace agreement was underwritten by the 2018 deal between Mr. Kerr and Mr. Machar, who are also leaders of two powerful ethnic groups. But elections delayed since 2015 have yet to take place. And more recently, Mr. Kiir has unilaterally amended key sections of the 2018 deal, which analysts say could endanger it entirely. So when they say two powerful ethnic groups, I wonder what they mean by that, because they're both
So
African,
right, but specifically
not one
the
is an
tribe,
Arab.
it's always down to in Africa, the way that the Americans and the Europeans exploit them is by exacerbating the tribal tensions. And so the imprisoned guy, Mashar, he's from I think it's called the Nuer, or I don't know how to pronounce it, Nuer. So Nuer, like cattle herding tribes. And the other guy is from the Dinka people.
Oh, okay.
So these tribes, there's always the historic feud between the tribes.
Yeah, I've heard of the Dinkas.
More important than whatever like communist versus capitalist thing, like to the African local people that aren't necessarily brainwashed by the Western education system, their tribal centuries long feuds would tend to be more important than whatever stuff that we think is, like whatever economic system that they should have, right?
Yep. Same thing that they do here, divide and conquer. Okay. Elections are now scheduled for December, but as fighting spreads, analysts say a vote looks increasingly unlikely. Oh, goodness. Last year, a United Nations helicopter came under attack from an opposition militia, and a crew member and a South Sudanese general were killed. More recently, hundreds of civilians have been killed in fighting, bringing accusations of war crimes from human rights groups. The world's youngest country, South Sudan, has struggled with waves of famine, conflict, and political turmoil since it achieved independence in 2011 after seceding from Sudan. The United Nations estimates that 280,000 people have fled their homes so far this year, and 40,000 children suffer acute malnutrition. And so, what does Trump want to do? Send all the southern Sudanese people into that?
Start to deport them there. Yeah.
That's just evil. Oh, he's so evil.
Exactly. Right. So this is where it's maybe people haven't, like, they're not reporting specifically on South Sudan because, like, Sudan is getting the attention because that's what people are finally responding to. They're saying, pay attention to Sudan. There's a genocide going on. But just across the border, there's this other kind of catastrophe happening that seems to be completely flying under the radar for the most part. So
Right. So more than 400,000 people died during the 5-year South Sudanese civil war that ended in 2018. 400,000 people. Wow.
And then, so this is where, when you start to add up all the collective, like, this part of Africa is being tortured, right? Between Ethiopia, there was 400,000 people died there in the Tigray War, and then, like, in South Sudan here, and in Sudan now, there were, I don't know what the death numbers are there, but like in Libya and in Somalia, like there's in like Western Sahara is another thing we got to talk about, right? And like the Congo, like in Nigeria and stuff, like there's starting to be massive amounts of death, like millions of people are dying, and it's not really being reported on as like some kind of world war situation, right? Like, but these numbers are serious, right? Like, this is like Ukraine level numbers, but Ukraine's the one that gets all the attention. I wonder why.
Right. I mean, I guess this is how Bill Gates could solve and Peter Thiel and all them could solve the so-called overpopulation. This world is not overpopulated. Like, stop with the cap. You know, they just they don't want they just want enough slaves to do their bidding. Just enough. We don't need that many. So anyway, the country's woes are compounded by the conflict in its northern neighbor, Sudan. South Sudan's economy is hugely dependent on revenues from its oil fields, but most of that is exported through pipes that cross Sudan. And they have been compromised or cut off during the Sudanese civil war. Mr. Kerr's authority has also been challenged by new rebel groups that have threatened to topple him. In the past 2 months, one such group withdrew from its peace deal with the government. Jacqueline, I wish they had that thing right here. She says they should have something where you could you saw it. Exactly.
There probably is something like that.
I'm gonna try.
But that'll slow down the computer even more if I downloaded it. But anyway.
Yeah. Wilson Dang Korat. There. I think that's good enough.
Poirot.
Oh, then that sounds French. Poirot.
I don't know.
Okay.
But it also looks pretty African. So, but his name is Wilson. And Dang sounds pretty Chinese.
Chinese, I know. He's like, right. Well, whoever he is, he's a former deputy military chief. He's threatened to start his own group if Mr. Kiir does not resign. The United Nations has warned that incendiary remarks from senior government officials could lead to more atrocities.
Now, children, behave.
And this is just telling us about I think 2 people wrote this, so I'm not sure why they're only giving you information about one. But Declan Walsh is the chief Africa correspondent for the Times based in Nairobi, Kenya. He previously reported from Cairo, covering the Middle East and Islamabad, Pakistan.
Well, Declan, you forgot to mention the RSF when you talked about when you talked about the pipeline that they're crossing through Sudan that has been disrupted and compromised during the civil war. You forgot to mention the RSF, asshole. Anyway.
Right. And and I know I know the chat remember, well, hopefully, but if you don't remember, the RSF is they're the ones that the UAE are supplying with weapons, and they're just going around terrorizing people. Also, the UAE can steal gold right from underneath the citizens.
Yeah, South Sudan is part of that gold smuggling operation to the UAE. That's another little tidbit I learned in this little research project. So that was the end of that article. So we can go to the next here. So it mentioned a helicopter attack as far as like the thing that the guy is accusing him of, like as far as the reason to put him in prison. So all right, is that, maybe I got to make it a little bigger. Is that big enough?
A little bigger.
There we go.
There we go.
So this is from March 7th, 2025. South Sudan People's Defense Force Commander Major Dak and 27 of his soldiers were killed during a United Nations evacuation operation in Nasir on Friday morning, a government spokesperson has said. A UN crew member also lost their life in the incident. The evacuation was part of efforts to defuse tensions following recent clashes between the SSPDF and the White Army, a loosely organized armed youth group predominantly from the Nuer ethnic community. It has been linked by the government to SPLA-IO forces loyal to Dr. Riek Machar. So the government accuses this White Army of being controlled by the SPLA-IO. So the next article I'm going to read is going to kind of dispel that rumor. The White Army had seized control of Nasir's military barracks on Tuesday after fierce fighting with government forces, leaving General Major and his troops stranded in the bush. The UN helicopter involved in the evacuation reportedly came under heavy fire from the White Army during the operation. The evacuation had been coordinated by the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in opposition, led by First Vice President Dr. Riek Machar, as part of an initiative to rescue stranded SSPDF troops. So this is I felt this is the interesting part, right? So the White Army seizes control of this military barracks and leaving this guy and his troops stranded. So then it's an embarrassment that the UN feels that they need to involve themselves in. And this evacuation is coordinated by the people that they accuse of controlling the White Army that they link to, right? So what seems to be the case here is that this operation ended in a spectacular embarrassment for the president. And then because there's a history of this vice president, I think he was like a fighter in this army, or like a leader in it of some and because the peace process is a delicate balance between like this group and this SSPDF group, the president does not trust this guy's story that he was not working with these people and that the evacuation failed or whatever, not because he was sabotaged it or whatever, but because it failed, right? That's my speculation. The SSPDF leadership has accused SPLM-IO leaders of orchestrating the conflict in Nasir, a claim that has further strained relations between the two groups. In response to the allegations, several senior SPLM-IO officials were arrested in Juba earlier this week, including Gabriel Duop Lam, Deputy Chief of the SSPDF and Chief of Staff of the SPLA-IO, as well as Petroleum Minister Puat Kang. So it sounds like there's some Asian diaspora in South Sudan. I think the Chinese might be.
I don't know if the
involved in their oil sector. So there's probably they've probably been at that for decades. There's a lot of intermixing, I think, going on there. What were you saying?
Oh, I just we didn't really say what those acronyms meant.
Oh,
so,
yeah. I thought it said it earlier. Let me let me see. South Sudan Defense Forces, the SSPDF, the South Sudan People's Defense Forces.
SSPDF.
So that's the government.
Okay, then
that's the government's army.
Yep.
And then
then
Sudan People's
Liberation Movement in opposition. That's
it's
Dr.
like a
Machar's group. And then there's another one.
There's
the SPLM-IO.
There's SPLM-IO is the in opposition. SPLA-IO.
Oh, that's
the one over here.
My bad. AIO.
Yeah.
AIO
this is the one that they threw the article threw out without explaining it, from what I can tell. So we might have to look that one up. I didn't catch that. You saw that one. Yeah.
Sudan's People Liberation Army in opposition. Isn't that the other one? Wait a minute.
So that's where they have what they haven't mentioned in this article is the Sudan's People's Liberation Movement that's not in opposition. That's the one that's
okay.
But they don't talk about that one in this article. But clearly there was a situation where they felt they had to make a break because the government already just demonstrated corruption, and they felt that they needed to continue their resistance movement.
Do you mind if I read? Do you mind if I read something really quickly, just so people could follow?
Yep.
Okay, so
let me just bring this down for a minute.
Just for a minute. Is the article coming up? Nope.
Oh, you got it.
Let's see.
Sorry. There we go.
All right. So SPLA-IO stands for the Sudan People's Liberation Army in Opposition. a South Sudanese army rebel group formed in 2013 to 2014 during the South Sudanese Civil War, led primarily by Dr. I wonder why they don't put doctor in front of his name. Riek Machar. It split from the main army, which is the SPLA, to oppose President Salva Kiir, largely representing Nuer ethnic interests in fighting for political reform. So, again, South People's Liberation Army in opposition. That's the SPLA-IO. Context, it is the army wing of the SPLM-IO, South People's Liberation Movement in opposition, the political party. So that's the part that I think I was missing.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's part
SPLA-IO is a military wing of the political party, SPLM-IO.
But you see how they're all people's liberation armies, right? So there's like a Marxist-Leninist ideology that's a lot of these armies appear to have started out with. Whether or not they continue to have that kind of revolutionary military tactics actually being employed is kind of like, that's why there's this splinter group. That's the Marxist-Leninist thing, is if they stop being like a people's liberation army, then you have to like show the people that they're the real people's liberation armies over here, not there betraying you or whatever, making deals with the imperialist people. This is where we gotta probably another time talk about the Sudanese Communist Party, because it's allegedly one of the been historically the most powerful communist parties in Africa, and it's like in modern times it's a little bit diminished in power and influence because of the Sino-Soviet split, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and whatever the dictator that took power in Sudan, whatever, that put an end to the democracy movement.
Yeah, I want to just finish reading this because this is kind of interesting too. So the group formed following a political dispute in 2013. We kind of already talked about that, leading to a civil war against the government forces known as the Sudan People's Liberation Army, which later became the South Sudan People's Defense Forces. So I think that piece was kind of missing too.
Yeah.
So SPLA became the SSPDF, and SPLA in opposition. That's why they say in opposition, because they're in opposition to the. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense to everyone that's listening now.
Yeah, I hope everyone understands that SPLA became SPDIF and Splimio splintered off from SPLA, right?
And Rondo said, and they're all controlled by the la li lu le lo.
It's so simple. I don't know why you don't get it, understand it. So did you read the last bit about despite the peace agreements?
No, not yet. Okay, so despite peace agreements, the SPLA in opposition remains a major, sometimes fractured political and military force in South Sudan's, often operating in South Sudan, often operating as a rebel faction or participating in the transitional government while maintaining its own command structure. Okay, so
they're trying to participate in the this is where this is all disintegrated. They're no longer able to participate in the transitional government because the peace process has not been implemented. So they're reverting back to the rebel faction. They had to maintain their own command structure because, like, the same situation is in the Congo here. In order for peace to occur, they have to, the warring parties have to first stop fighting, and then they have to begin a lengthy process of integrating the armies in a way that respects the power of both groups. And so it's a very delicate process that's easily undermined.
Yep. So now we can go back to your article. Wait, let me take mine down, put yours up. Okay. because I hope people have a better understanding of.
Yeah, that was important. I probably should have done that. Thank you for that. So,
You're welcome.
so the SSPDF leadership had accused the SPLM-IO leaders of orchestrating the conflict in Nasir, a claim that has further strained relations between the two groups. In response to the allegations, several senior SPLM-IO officials were arrested in Juba earlier this week, including Gabriel Duab-Lam, Deputy Chief of the SSPDF and Chief of Staff of the SPLA-IO, as well as Petroleum Minister Puat Kang. Responding to questions by journalists in Juba on Friday evening, Information Minister and Government Minister Michael Makui Lueth stated that the exact number of casualties on the SSPDF side remains unclear. They never want to talk about their casualty numbers, but confirmed that approximately 27 soldiers died alongside General Major during the evacuation of Nasir this morning. Some of the forces have appeared elsewhere and are being traced, he added, I guess. This is a weird way that they got that in there.
Yeah.
The violence in Nasir highlights the ongoing challenges South Sudan faces in fully integrating its various armed groups into a unified national army, a key provision of the 2018 peace agreement that ended a 5-year civil war. Although the country has been formally at peace since the agreement was signed, political tensions remain high. That's kind of a good little preamble to this article, which is a little bit better of an explainer. Although I think this is monitor.co.ug. I think it must be a Ugandan website. I don't know about the source behind this because we didn't have time to do much research today. Do you have any comments before I jump into this one? This one's like where we really kind of understand a little bit more of like the politics, like the tribal politics happening here.
Okay, so when he says that, so he's blaming them for a ghost army, he's talking about the SPLA-IO.
He's not even that. He's talking about the white army that earlier in the article, it said there was recent clashes between the SSPDF and the White Army, a loosely organized armed youth group, predominantly from the newer ethnic community that they linked with. Yes. So then the government's accusing the White Army of being run by the SPLA-IO. So this article kind of tries to dispel that notion. So, and this is from Monday, February 2nd, 2026. It's very recent. The UN issued warnings of potential mass.
Bigger?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of little. Oh. That's better.
So the UN issued warnings of potential mass violence between the South Sudanese government and the White Army in January 2026. A peace agreement ended a 5-year civil war in the country in 2018. This was followed by a period of relative calm that ended in 2025 in the wake of clashes between the government and the White Army. Attempts to bring peace since have faltered. So this is that period of time where
White Army with weapons.
Right. This is the White Army is like a local youth militia.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Who's supplying them with weapons?
Yeah. I'm not sure. It's a good question.
I'm gonna look that up.
see if you'll be able to trust the answer that pops up.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, I don't think is a question you can ask on the fly because you need to take the time to vet the information that you find. Because there's likely when it says who's supplying weapons to these people, the U.S. is gonna say like ISIS is. It's like no. That's what you'd like us to believe, but let's make sure we get the whatever. Do our best to get it right. But that's where it's always the question: should we cancel the show if we don't have time to get ready for it, or should we just try and do a bit of a sloppy thing?
Well, this is interesting.
You got a little tidbit?
Yeah. So reports are indicating that the fighters, the White Army, is receiving weapons and ammunition from elements of the SSPDF. So that would imply that
his own army wants to overthrow him.
Or that he's creating a conflict so he can extend his time even more. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
That's the implication that I'm getting from that. But there are some articles about it that I pulled up. But yeah, keep going. Keep going.
That's an interesting. I was not the answer I was expecting.
Me either.
So the UN issued warnings of potential mass violence between the South Sudanese government and the White Army in January 2026. I already read that. The government has charged and suspended First Vice President Machar, we've already repeated that a few times, over claims that he commanded the White Army during the violence in Nasir, Upper Nile State. Jan Pospisil, who has studied South Sudan's conflict dynamics, explains the origins of the White Army and its political impact. What is the White Army?
You're not sharing. You're not sharing the article anymore.
I brought it down. Yeah. There we go. So what is the White Army? The White Army is best understood as a set of temporary, community-mandated self-defense mobilizations organized along sectional and clan lines. The term White Army refers to the ash traditionally used in Nuer cattle camps to repel mosquitoes. The ash is smeared on the bodies and faces of young men and gives them a whitish appearance. The Nuer are one of South Sudan's largest ethnic groups. They primarily keep cattle and inhabit the greater Upper Nile region. Authority in the White Army flows upward from communities, not downward from political leaders. So that, to me, if that is true, that's a very interesting footnote, at least. That's noteworthy, that the authority in the White Army flows upward from communities, not downward from political leaders. The White Army's orientation is primarily defensive, protecting cattle and land and local autonomy in an environment where the state is experienced less as a provider of security than as a source of threat. But this defensive logic coexists with raiding and intercommunal violence. Its history explains its ambivalent role. The White Army grew out of newer youth self-defense formations that had existed since the 1960s. In 1991, the White Army started to proactively use this name and was drawn into national conflict around the so-called Nasir split. This is when suspended Vice President Riek Machar and other predominantly newer commanders broke with John Garang's Sudan People's Liberation Movement. Garang, who died in 2005, was from another of South Sudan's major ethnic groups, the Dinka. White Army forces fought alongside the Nasir faction, led by, among others, Machar, and were central to a massive attack on Bor later in 1991. The Bor massacre led to the death of several thousand Bor Dinka, a subgroup of the Dinka people who primarily inhabit Jonglei State. Attacks were carried out largely by White Army fighters pursuing revenge over cattle raids and local objectives that aligned only partially with Machar's political aims. This is an episode Machar apologized for in 2011, saying he was responsible for both the good things and the bad things that came as a result of the Nasir Declaration. So this kind of helps explain a little bit as how he's being accused again now, because he apparently admitted some kind of responsibility for a massacre, a war crime, a genocide, apparently. And so now they're going to point the finger at him again. So the apology was revealing it acknowledged political responsibility without implying operational command. It's a little bit interesting. The Bor massacre remains a dominant lens through which many Bor Dinka understand the White Army as an organized anti-Dinka force opposing the ruling party. This is understandable, but is also a source of lasting misperception about the group, how the group operates. What's the relationship between Riek Machar and the White Army? Machar has benefited politically from White Army mobilization, but he does not direct it. His current prosecution is therefore deeply ironic. Machar is accused of commanding a force that has time and again demonstrated its structural resistance to sustained external control, including his own. But he is now being tried for exercising a form of command that he has long sought, but never fully possessed.
So is the White Army like Antifa?
The White Army to me sounds like gangs in LA or like Compton or whatever. If when things become lawless, whatever, then they're just like the youth protect themselves, and eventually, if that gets bad enough, they'll form an army, right?
Mm. I want to, after we finish with that article, I want to share. I just realized who the Noor people are, and I just want to show people if they're not familiar with them, because their cattle is like way different from our cows and bulls. Like they're very gorgeous animals.
Okay,
But anyway,
sure.
go ahead.
Yeah, we can show that. I'm not sure. You might want to show that now because this article is a bit not quite near the end yet. So
Yeah, I can wait
but
till
I'll
you're
just read a
done.
bit more. All right, cool. So he is now being tried, for exercising a form of command that he wanted but never had. From the 1991 Nasir split to the civil war between the government and the Machar-led opposition that erupted in December 2013, and the renewed violence of 2025, White Army forces have repeatedly fought alongside Machar's forces. However, the White Army exists as an amalgamation of community militias that are tied to particular areas rather than as one organized force. Their size depends on the capacity of regional leaders to mobilize the youth at a given time. During the Civil War, White Army mobilizations delivered some of the opposition's most significant battlefield successes. Yet these forces often withdraw once immediate objectives, such as the defeat of militias aligned with the government in a certain territory, are achieved. This leaves opposition units unable to hold territory. The assumption that's made is that these temporary alliances equate to control of the White Army. They don't. Confusing the two has repeatedly distorted how South Sudan's conflicts are understood and mismanaged. Conflating the White Army with the Sudan People's Liberation Movement army in opposition serves a political purpose. It legitimizes state counterinsurgency, including airstrikes over the course of 2025 that hit civilian areas. It recasts local resistance as elite manipulation. It's interesting because, it's almost like
it's elite manipulation. That's an
right.
interesting choice of words.
It's like damned if you do, catch 22, damned if you don't.
Jacqueline's going to sleep.
The guy's insisting that. Okay,
Sorry.
sorry, we started late tonight, so you have to catch up in the morning.
Can I show her this picture then before she leaves?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Let me see. I can add mine to the stage. Oh. Okay. Add to the stage. Look at their cattle.
Wow, nice.
Isn't that nice?
Don't fuck with that bull. You get those horns.
I know. I know. I've seen them on Facebook. Like I watch videos and stuff about how they rely heavily on their cattle. Almost they kind of revere them almost like in India, except they also eat their cattle.
These guys gotta be,
but they treat them well.
Like these kind of cattle herding tribes must have been some of the first like people to be domesticating the cow to begin with, kind of thing. So they've had a very long relationship with their
cattle, yes.
Yeah, affinity for the cattle is we don't understand at all. You know, it's like, why do you love that cow so much, or whatever? Just shut up, boy.
They're like family, even though they're used to. They do eat them sometimes, but they treat them well. You know what I mean?
Sounds good. Thanks, Go Jacqueline. Glad you got to see that before you go to bed. Have dreams of a big strong bull now.
All right, go ahead.
So let me get back to this. So this thing about recasting local resistance as elite manipulation, it's interesting because the government can kind of, or the president, Kiir, he can sort of try and say, you better keep those white army people under control, and then when they do something because they're not under his control, he can kind of punish him, like, hey, you didn't control those people, but that would have been elite manipulation if he did control them. So it's like I think the president guy is, like you're saying, he's engineering this conflict. Whether I think he's too stupid to understand that he's engineering his own demise, but might feel like that's what he needs to do. So
Jacqueline said, "Behave yourself now." She heard your little comment.
I'll do my best.
He won't.
Which is usually I'll end up failing at that, whatever, after not trying very hard. So
this is I just want to go back to the cattle real quick, because this is something I did not know. I think it's pronounced Hathor. A major ancient Egyptian goddess, was the deity of love, beauty, music, dancing, fertility, and joy, often depicted as a cow. Interesting. Now I got to go look that up.
That was something that I had been aware of. The Hathor was the cow goddess, whatever Egyptian thingy. I didn't remember all that other stuff about the dancing and music and fertility. But yeah, sounds about right.
So I know Hathor. That's why she has the horns, on the top of her head. Okay, that makes sense.
I remember these because, like, if you play video games with like Greek and Egyptian mythology, like what is it, Age of Empire kind of, or I forget what they're called, but you get to play with these kind of characters in the game, so you get to know them first through video games rather than through actual historical knowledge. That's the welcome to the modern world. But maybe it's a good way to get kids to go.
At least you get to know them.
Yeah, it's a good way to get them started if they want to get like down the rabbit hole. Let's get this article back to this article.
Yes, sir.
It also obscures deeper drivers of South Sudan's violence: the collapse of civilian protection, the outsourcing of force to allied ethnic militias, such as the Agwelek or the Abashok, and the ethnicization of political belonging since 2013. Sounds kind of like arranging like the structure, the hierarchy of power along racial lines since 2013. If the White Army continues to be misunderstood, the danger is further ethnicization of South Sudan's politics. This is where complex communal violence is reduced to criminal conspiracy and used to legitimize militarized state responses. Treating political crises as matters for prosecution rather than compromise risks deepening the very dynamics that have fueled South Sudan's war since 2013. The state portrays the White Army as a terrorist group. Go figure. Why is this a problem? In the case it has brought against Machar, the government is advancing a familiar claim. The White Army is an armed wing of the SPLM-AIO acting on Machar's orders. The charge matters. It underpins not only Machar's prosecution, but also a wider narrative that treats community mobilizations as opposition conspiracy in South Sudan. The claim rests on a fundamental misunderstanding of what the White Army is and has been for more than 3 decades. Firstly, the group draws on long-standing Nuer community self-defense traditions, even if it became politically visible in national conflict in the early 1990s. It is neither purely protective nor purely predatory. This makes the White Army difficult to incorporate into elite peace agreements and easy to mischaracterize as irrational or terrorist. Secondly, the White Army is not a standing militia nor an insurgent organization with a central command. Authority flows from the community. To understand why the White Army mobilizes as it does, it is important to consider December 2013. The mass killing of Nuer civilians in Juba at the outbreak of civil war marked a decisive rupture in South Sudan's political order. So the mass killings of Nuer civilians in Juba at the outbreak of the civil war, that's probably a pretty important paragraph. That's another noteworthy paragraph, right? Violence that had previously been mediated through elite rivalry and fragmented local conflicts became overtly tribalized. For many newer communities, December 2013 was experienced not as a power struggle within the ruling party, but as an existential attack marked by mass killings, displacement, and the collapse of civilian protection. This interpretation, whether accepted or rejected by external observers, has shaped mobilization ever since. White Army fighters interviewed by journalists and researchers over the past decade have been consistent. They did not fight because Machar was removed from office, but because Nuer civilians were killed. And since 2013, Nuer diaspora networks across North America, Europe, and East Africa have played a role in supporting White Army mobilizations. This support has taken multiple forms: fundraising, advocacy, and social media campaigning, logistical assistance, and political pressure on opposition leaders. Diaspora involvement reinforces White Army mobilization by amplifying narratives of collective victimhood and unfinished justice, often from a distance that strips away the everyday constraints faced by communities on the ground. As a result, so that's an interesting, comment there at the end too. Go ahead.
Read it again. I'm sorry. Diaspora involvement
reinforces White Army mobilization by amplifying narratives of collective victimhood and unfinished justice, often from a distance that strips away the everyday constraints faced by communities on the ground. Sounds like she's kind of, condescending the diaspora. Like you're making
victimhood, justice.
But they're like relating to their people back at home being like murdered and stuff, and they're like, we should protect our people, whether we're in the diaspora or we're back at home. That's our people, and they're all like, it's that colonial paternalistic mentality, right?
Well, I mean, they are Austrian,
right? Austrian Institute for Jan Pospisil. That's what I was gonna say. We should be sure to ask the question: who is Jan Pospisil? Right.
This article does seem it seems aligned with what I found about what's his name, Kier actually being the one to supply the White Army with weapons.
That's right, Eggs. The Age Mythology. That's the one I was trying to remember.
He probably never did it. Did you get the sword? Sorry.
So yeah, that's the end of that article.
I don't know what Rondo's talking about. He mentioned this before. Metal Gear Solid. Do you know what
Metal Gear Solid? It's a video game. I never played that one, but it's
okay, because he said this earlier. Metal Gear Solid explained this 20 years ago. I think that's when we were, but I didn't understand what he was saying, so I just kind of.
Yeah, I forget the context. I don't know I missed that. So that was
I think when he said that, it's around. It was around the time that we were talking about the different factions and how they're it was around this time. So the same thing they do here, divide and conquer. So I think that's what he's talking about. That Metal Gear explained that in the game, I guess, 20 years ago.
Okay. So I'm not sure what else, if you want to not do a super long show today. There was one other thing I thought worth mentioning as far as the conflict.
Yeah, I don't want to do a super long show, but I did want to show Hathor.
So I just noticed that a lot of this. Oh yeah, Hathor, nice.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that this conflict, the northeast area of Sudan, South Sudan, that this is happening in is called like the Jonglei State. And so just a little bit of a background to this would be this canal project. Because once I started looking into these, apparently I got a thing for canals now, eh? I've been talking about all these different.
You look so dark today too.
Oh, is it? I don't know. Is it dark in here?
I forgot to mention that earlier. It's hard to see your face.
Oh, my bad. My lighting is a little bit
So what is this new obsession with canals?
It's just like the mega projects and stuff that there's like driving a lot of these conflicts. There's the Belt and Road Initiative's got a lot of canal projects and dams and stuff that they're trying to do, but they're not the only ones who are building canals and stuff. So like a lot of the American interests in Africa are about these canals, but this one is I think it's Egypt meddling and well, let me see. Let me share it with you guys so that I don't know why it's not popping up here. Let me try again. There it is. The stupid banner things. So now I gotta make it bigger. No, I don't want to agree. Sure, whatever. All right, can you see that?
Signed your life away.
Well, I would have had to take the time to go into all the details. Like some of them are annoying in that they don't make a disagree button for you, but whatever. This to the Journal of International Affairs or the Columbia, whatever. Columbia University in the city of New York. Dum dum dum. So the Jonglei Canal, the flawed logic of hydro diplomacy in the Nile Basin. What was this from? This is like a stalled project in like from 2022. So, but I think that the government, the president in power has been trying to push this sort of thing. And part of the reason why the people need to resist is to ensure that this sort of project will never happens, right? Because it will destroy the entire region. So water disputes have remained a global challenge since the 20th century. This is by James Maker. I don't know how to pronounce some of these names. For instance, the Tigris and Euphrates River, originating in Turkey and cutting through both Syria and Iraq, have experienced drastic reductions in water flows in recent years, primarily due to Turkish hydro engineering and regional droughts. In contrast to many other parts of the world, Africa's water resources vary in geographical extent and time. Thus, the escalating problem of water scarcity has already reached alarming dimensions in several regions of the African continent, where water is becoming increasingly crucial for economic development and societal well-being, alongside the establishment of complex energy and irrigation projects along river basins to sustain livelihoods. The Nile River is a case in point. This case study presents the Jonglei Canal project in South Sudan, a proposed effort to finish the half-completed engineering mega-project funded by Egypt, and the flawed logic of hydro diplomacy in the Nile Basin. The other thing you need to know about that's like a big problem that's going to probably lead to another Ethiopian war, like in the Tigray region with Eritrea and everything, is like this dam that Ethiopia just finished that Egypt's opposing. So there's that dam, and then there's this whatever canal that they're trying to do. So Egypt's trying to dominate the Nile, and all the other countries that have access to it are trying to kind of challenge that domination. So disputes have since escalated and led to severe tensions between upstream and downstream riparian states. These states have approached conflict over resource control and wielded power against one another, which can be attributed to political development within each state. The author conducted a study using descriptive survey design to sample university students and political leaders within the Nile Basin to gauge informed opinions on the state of this protracted and complicated situation. Blah, 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 blah. For the longest period, downstream countries, Egypt and Sudan, the downstream countries that are Egypt and Sudan, have dominated the Nile's hydropolitics, leaving upstream countries, East African states, out of critical decision-making processes. Consequently, the problem that this study analyzes is South Sudan's role in the Nile River state's hydro diplomacy. The Jonglei Canal project of South Sudan first began in 1980, though the idea of a dam on the Nile in this region predates this attempt by decades. Some of these plans are like centuries old.
I mean,
like colonial kind of plans, maybe.
Yeah, the fact that they're being left out of the discussions is just evil.
Right.
They can't have a seat at the table in discussing their own land.
Yeah. But Egypt has always felt like Sudan has to do whatever it says, kind of like the since the time of the pharaohs, they've been trying to dominate Sudan. So that's where I think in this case, Egypt can fuck off. So where was I here? It is located in South Sudan's Upper Nile region, the canal project. It started as a hydro construction project that aims to alter the White Nile's path as it passes through the Sud, a marshy area. The canal's purpose is to absorb a significant amount of water that enters Sudan via this swamp and channel it quickly through the Sud's marshes and wetlands, preventing most of the water from being lost to transpiration and evaporation en route north. However, when the North-South Civil War in Sudan broke out in 1983, the canal project was temporarily halted. Temporarily? If it's still fucking hasn't happened yet, that's a pretty long temporary. What are you expecting?
Right.
No matter what?
They've had another civil war since then.
According to John...
Okay, that's all longitude and latitude and stuff. Like, I don't think we need that paragraph.
Right. So this this John Garang guy came up earlier as far as the SPLIO splitting from the other group or whatever. I remember reading his name, or if you watch the playback, we'll see. Maybe we'll be able to connect the dots here. So according to John Garang de Mabior, the founder of the Sudanese Revolution and the first president of South Sudan, the Jonglei project area is set to correspond with the administrative boundaries of the Sud marshes in South Sudan. This area basically lies between, this is where you were saying.
Yeah.
This area is there. The Sabat, White Nile, and Bahr el Jebel rivers border it on the north and west. The state of Jonglei and eastern Equatoria border it on the south, and Ethiopia has a boundary with it on the east. The rural counties of Bor, Twik East, Duke, Pigi, Pibor, Akobo, Wat, and Fanjak are included in the Jonglei project's areas. So this is where that Bor massacre happened, right? Currently, this region is approximately 120,000 square kilometers of swamp, grassland, and agriculture. Obviously, this region is extremely important to Africa's wildlife. Just saying, not that anyone's going to fucking care or remember that at this point.
Do you want to, should we show them like a map of where instead of saying all that longitude? And, yes. Yeah. I got it right here.
Because I feel like this is one of the, as far as what are the U.S. and Israel and them trying to do here this is one of Africa's most important sources of water. And so they're going to create a conflict here so that they could exacerbate all of Africa's water woes. You know, there's not already Africa does not have as much water as like a lot, like Canada's got a huge amount of water, right? Like Africa would love to have as much water as we do. So they can't necessarily afford to have this sort of access disrupted.
I can't make it any bigger, unfortunately. Like, it's not making this map bigger. I could try to pull up a different map. But
That's
you
for
see
just
that
Google Maps.
Southern Sudan.
Google, well, you can't like click it and it'll say like open in a new
show you this
tab. Or...
I can show you. Can you see these?
Yeah. This is
Big
where
enough?
Google Maps is usually the best for this, even though I hate Google or whatever. That's why they got the satellites that you can use to actually look.
Okay, well here it is right here. Wait,
Yeah.
you don't see my marker. See my marker? Nope.
Yeah.
But hopefully you could see where it is.
That gives us
From
a general
that
idea.
picture to the right. Yeah. Okay, so I'll put yours back up. So I gotta take mine down first. Here we go. There we go.
Okay. So the current proposal for the Jonglei Canal is to complete the project with funding by Egypt. This proposal has split the current South Sudanese government, with various ministries arguing for and against, I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be an S and a T there, against the proposed diversion of the Nile River. While the Zhonglai Canal is intended to positively impact the Nile Basin downstream, this research demonstrates that it may have detrimental consequences for the Sud area's residents, flora and fauna, and economy. Furthermore, the Sud wetlands and related floodplains may also shrink due to the water diversion, which will further impact the region. So this is where the proponents of a mega project like this might be a little bit more of the industrial revolution kind of people. What we need for our people is to destroy the land by having these massive energy projects that will, it'll create a little bit of, you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet or whatever, but it'll be worth it in the end. And this is how they step on the people's interests in the name of the national interest, With the independence of South Sudan in 2011, the number of Nile riparian countries has since increased to 11, further complicating this transnational issue. Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya share Lake Victoria, and it is here that the White Nile begins as the Victoria Nile. The Kagera River, which is the main river flowing into Lake Victoria, originates in the highlands of Burundi and Rwanda. Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo share the Semliki River, which flows into Lake Albert, one of the White Nile's sources, in Lake Albert itself. So this is an interesting way to understand how these countries kind of, their politics relate to one another, because you kind of have to follow the river a little bit, not just the money. Eventually, the White Nile consolidates its position in the world's newest state of South Sudan. Additionally, Ethiopia, where the Blue Nile and almost all of its tributaries originate, shares sections of the Satit River, a tributary of the Atbara River. Sudan and Egypt are admittedly the riparian states with the lowest water levels. So actually, you went looking for that map, and here it is.
Oh.
So there's Sudan. Here's Ethiopia, the Central African Republic, and Congo, Uganda. And so Zhonglai province, the Upper Nile province, I guess.
So it goes from Mongolia. It's hard to see. You scared the daylights out of me. Thank you kindly. Thank you kindly.
So I guess the canal would be like right here or something.
Yeah, I think it's that line. It's kind of like bluish, I think.
But anyway, I don't know if this is a massive thing, so I'm gonna put this in the Discord because this is not trying to be a long thing, but that's what I'm saying. I'm just trying to remember to, as much as we want to say, oh, it's the ethnic tribal tensions, that's the end of the story, right? You got to remember
you always got to think about the resources.
Yeah, exactly. That's like part of the Marxist analysis, right? It's like the tribal, the ethnic tensions are a real part of why the conflict is occurring, but like the non-Marxist people will say that is the end-all be-all cause of it, and the more Marxist analysis is to say that those tensions get inflamed and exacerbated specifically because they're fighting over the resources, right? It's really about the resources, but then the tribal allegiances are kind of like how they how they align as far as how to fight over the resources, but it's still about the resources, right? So it's anyway. Sorry, you muted there.
I said ultimately that's what it's about. Every fucking time.
About that wealth accumulation, Mm-hmm. After survival's taken care of, it becomes about thrival. And then you gotta, usually for thrival, it's about interference in someone else's survival to increase your thrival, right?
Right. Yeah, I think we kind of covered it as well as we could with doing research. We were not able to really prep for this show like would have wanted to. So
Yeah,
we
could
didn't
come
even
back.
know what we were going to be talking about until like 2 hours before or something.
Yeah, this is just something I'm trying to pull something out of my head a little bit. Like, what have I heard? 'Cause I don't have time to go looking for stuff that I remember was worth talking about, and that was the one thing that popped up. So actually, as far as if we're wrapping up and getting out of here, there's a couple of different things in Africa that are really interesting. There was an announcement from Niger, like the Sahel states, that they're going to war with France. So there is a whole thing going on with like NATO is on the rocks; it might collapse and everything, and it seems like the U.S. and France are really having some diplomatic disputes. That's not just like a vassal's like being a little too uppity, and Trump's trying to put him in his place. But there was also a visit to Burkina Faso by the U.S., which was pretty interesting. I don't want to read the whole article. I'll put that stuff in the Discord too. But I'm just saying, it's curious to me that the U.S. visits the Sahel Alliance and says that they're going to respect their sovereignty, and that they want to do business. So instead of like aid, they're going to do trade. And then
Maybe
now,
we could cover it next week. Maybe we could cover it next week.
now the Sahel moves on to say we're going to war with France. Not going to talk about the U.S. or whatever, kind of conspicuously, as far as I'm concerned.
That's a juicy topic.
We're talking about the anti-imperialist Sahel states that are happy to do a business with the U.S. Interesting, so long as they can go after their traditional enemy of France. So let's put a pin on that. We'll talk about it next week.
That's very interesting. We hadn't done Vietnam yet. It's on the list.
Yep, and Western Sahara, we got to get to that too. That's another like black hole in Africa that is an atrocious story, and like they're developing stories. That's why I'm saying we'll come back to South Sudan, because this is only the beginning of the return to violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
but don't forget Tuesday. Come up. Anything you guys want to talk about? Let's talk about it on Tuesday for another open discussion. I really enjoy those, by the way.
Yeah, me too. It's good I like these ones where I get to kind of do my foreign policy stuff, but I also appreciate getting to grow our community and getting to know people better.
Yeah. And don't forget, we're looking for a host for Tuesdays as well. So we can like take a break in between those long hours.
Yeah. Well, as far as Tuesday and then Thursday is not that far away, we might need to tweak things around a little bit as far as need time to do the research in order to deliver a good show. So,
Indeed. Yeah, because we're 2 hours in.
Yeah, we're going. We're getting out of here. Don't worry.
Wait till you see us on Tuesdays. It's a marathon. Like those could be 5, 6, 7 hours. But they're worth it. They're totally worth it.
We're kind of I hope you guys aren't starting to get a little tired of us. We're starting to be seeing us a little more often. We're all over the place now. All over your screens now.
And Indy, that was a great show with Reef and Colin. Well, I like to call them Panda Bear and Teddy Bear, but that's just me. But Reef and Colin, they were well did a good job in reporting. When was that? It was like 2 days ago.
I thought that might have been.
My days get mixed up.
I start to get
Care Bear.
Those are good mascots for them, Panda Bear and Care Bear.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, it was last night. See, look at that. So, yeah,
all
News.
They start to blur together, you know.
Exactly. All right, so we're getting out of here. And Indy, when are
go check that
Indy
out.
Sorry,
I guess Indy's doing.
Oh, he's doing. Okay. That's what I was just about to ask him.
Yeah.
So, if you guys are available I guess I'll see you at the in the chat for Indy's tech tips. If not, hopefully I'll see you Tuesday, Thursday, or whenever we can see you again. We always miss you.
Good. Cool. Thanks. Stop it, Bella.
Okay, so I guess I'm closing out because we'll let Bella close it out. It's always a pleasure, y'all. And we'll see you soon. Until then, take care of yourselves, your family, and each other.
Yep. Have a good night and a good weekend, everyone. Stay strong. Stay calm. Peace.